So connection. In order to have connection, as far as I can tell, there are a few things that are needed. One is that there have to be parts. There have to be different entities or beings or yeah, parts um, that interact, that have a connection, right? These parts have to belong to a bigger whole. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to connect. And there has to be, so there has to be parts, there has to be a whole, and then there has to be something that connects them. And what I propose and what I find at the foundation of all of the healing and enlightenment traditions that I've studied deeply, what I believe is that this means that in every single part of a whole, every single part both has something about it that is unique, that is autonomous, that is itself, that has boundaries, that has a distinct essence. Selfhood is one way to put this. That has a distinct selfhood. But every single part in the whole also must have something inside of it which belongs to the whole. There must be something common between the parts. Otherwise, they couldn't connect. Otherwise, they wouldn't be parts of one whole. Right? And so, connection, relationship, where the two meet, has to be bridged somehow by something common. When I look inside myself and I find anatomy, I find my inner organs and blood vessels and muscles and bones and fascia and right, all of these amazing, incredible parts. They're distinct, right? A muscle is different than a bone. My kidney does something different than my heart. That's their uniqueness, their essence, their unique purpose. They're unique. They each have their unique shape, color, they have their unique boundaries, their unique motions, right? They're like little selves. And yet, they only work, they have to work together, right? If I were to take out the bones, that would be a problem for the fascia, for the muscles, for all the other parts that absolutely must interconnect to make the whole that I would call Aaron's body. So while my kidney has a different function than my heart, they have a shared functionality, which is to make this whole and to make this kind of bigger self possible. And so this metaphor, of course, we can then take outside of ourselves. I love nature metaphors, and actually what I'm about to share with you about the Yoga Sutras and the enlightenment path that it etches out might help you understand why I'm so obsessed with nature metaphors. But let's just run with this for another minute here. If I look outside myself, I can see that just like I have a physical body and everything in here does its thing and it's separate, but also it has a shared functionality. It has a shared purpose. It has to interconnect for the heart to be a heart, it actually has to also interconnect. Besides to do its own thing, it has to do this shared thing with others, with other parts. If you look to any ecosystem, it's exactly the same. Except instead of the body of Aaron, let's say it's a forest. And then the trees, the mushrooms, the animals, they each have their role to play, right? All the parts. A tree in the forest, one tree in the forest doesn't want to become like the best tree, the dominant tree in the forest. They don't take all of the resources away from everything else in the forest in order to personally thrive, because that would kill the forest. The same way my heart doesn't say, ha ha ha, I am so much better than kidneys and I'll show it to you, right? Kidneys be damned, like the heart's going to run everything, right? The heart's going to have everything. It's going to be the star of the body. We don't find that inside, and we don't find that in nature. Lo and behold, we can find that in our minds, in our stories. Lo and behold, we will find that in social structures, which are our sort of stories, right, playing out in human ecosystems. What makes an unhealthy relationship or an unhealthy connection? We can learn about by seeing what makes an unhealthy ecosystem, where we'll find that a part might be sick. This tree is sick, right? But we can see and find the ramifications of that everywhere. Right? My digestive issues don't just affect my digestion alone, and they can't just be solved just by looking at that one part. The two main ways that connection gets to be unhealthy are A, there's not enough intimacy between the parts. There's not enough care. There's not enough connection. If the root system underground isn't reaching, right, everywhere, then the resources aren't going to be shared. So how do we open up those lines of connection inside our own bodies? Especially in this last year, I've been having a lot of muscle tightness. And what does that create? It creates kind of blockages so that energy can't flow. And then I end up with all these other issues. And so creating pathways, opening pathways, making more intimacy, more connection is often what's happening, right? The real thing that's happening when we do any healing exercise physically or emotionally or mentally. But then there's always the pole, right? The other side of that, of the other way that connections become unhealthy, is if there's not enough distinction between the parts. If each part doesn't get to fully do its job, be its essence, if it doesn't get to have its boundaries and uniqueness. So while my shoulders and my neck often feel like compressed and like I can't get energy flowing through them because of tightness, hardness. On the other hand, my digestive issues, I learned a few years ago that I have leaky gut. It's something that I have to always be conscious of and kind of repairing. And what that means is there's basically holes in my gut lining. The boundaries, the separation between the gut and other parts of my body isn't good enough. The walls aren't strong enough, actually. And so that that digestive tract things can slip out of it and get into my bloodstream and they're not totally processed yet. The gut hasn't done its function yet before certain things get out. And so that can create a lot of pain. It can make my body respond as if I have food poisoning, because I kind of do, right? Because things aren't getting into the system having been properly processed. Okay, so that's just an example. But of course, another example of a boundary being broken would be just if I got a big cut, right? Um, so to translate this into our emotional life and into our interpersonal relationships, and this is an inquiry that I'll give you guys along with this is looking at in our relationships, in our connections, inner or outer, where is there too much of a boundary so that two parts that really should be able to flow and interchange are are stuck in separation? And when has there been a breach of boundaries? And in our personal relationships, this can look like codependency, enmeshment, not giving somebody else their own inner world, their own function, their own role in whatever ways that we do that, not giving that autonomy, not trusting that they have their part to play and they probably know more about that than you do. Right? There's a lot of different ways that it shows up. For me personally, so okay, well, I will. I just want to finish this so that it's clear that part what I just said. So these translate to devasha, right? When there's too hard of boundaries, there's not enough communication, there's too much separateness. Um, devasha, right? When we find that in the kleshas, this response where we want to other, to push away, to reject, to scapegoat. Um, to finally sort of be done with that, to just like eradicate it from our reality. To basically what we really are trying to do with any kind of connection that we're experiencing devasha with is we're trying to once and for all take it out of the hole. With connections where we find where we're experiencing raga as opposed to devasha, right? That's the opposite side of that will be attachment, enmeshment, being too much, too into, too entangled, difficult to tear apart the parts, to pull apart the parts. Addictions, right, are a manifestation of that, whereas like war or abandonment are manifestations of devasha. So in my own personal life, um, I've been very much feeling this 2-year anniversary of when I had the realization that I needed a lot more boundaries and a lot more space and a lot less intimacy and enmeshment and codependency with my then husband. And I'm still not exactly sure how to talk about the actual events that led up to that realization. Um, I mean, mostly it was a mounting physical and emotional crisis. And then I dared to reach out to a couple of different resources that gave me information that I both didn't want to hear and needed to hear. One being a couples therapist who, when I just told her over the phone some of what had gone down, used the word abuse in response, saying that this is abusive behavior that I was actually dealing with. And that framing, that word hadn't ever crossed my mind in terms of what I was experiencing in my relationship. And the second connection that I made, the second thing that I did was I reached out to someone that I had known my partner to have had some kind of relationship with, and then opened the door on actually a number of affairs. And as opposed to getting all of my information directly from my then partner, and he worked really hard to make sure that I didn't go and get information elsewhere. But that was a big problem with the codependency. He was the last word. I believed everything he said. I trusted him. And the process that then I had to undergo was the process of taking the trust back, taking the power back. And so in my raga around this person, right, my attachment, my desire to enmesh with this person, I felt that he balanced me, he made me whole. And I idealized so much about him and about the relationship. And I really didn't, until that moment, and this is almost exactly 2 years ago, until that day, I talked to both of those people in the same day. It never occurred to me that I could survive leaving. It never occurred to me that it would make any sense to leave. It never occurred to me that I could have more peace leaving. And since then, I have found that the process has been one of, getting out from that enmeshment, which is a whole process, but then giving back that trust, that power to sources that I could trust, that were more trustworthy, including mostly inner sources, but also this whole trip to Texas, filling the power vacuum, the resource vacuum that happened when I went from making one person really the whole way, the access to wholeness. And I would, because I have a limited amount of attention and care, and so much of it was wrapped up in always thinking about this person and always taking care of his needs and always doing everything I can to make sure that he was happy with me so he didn't leave me. I didn't have enough left for myself. I didn't have enough left for the parts of me that were calling out, hey, I really need attention, or hey, I actually don't believe him when he says what he's saying, right? Those parts had to get shut down again and again. And in order for me to find real health again, I had to return my attention, my awareness, my care, my respect to those other parts. And it has really been a process. Okay, I said that I would mention the process that the Yoga Sutras takes us through. Is one where we observe the kleshas, which most of you are familiar with by now. But raga and devesha are two main aspects of this klesha. I won't go into the other ones as much right now, but they're basically the stories in our minds and our identities, right? As well as a kind of feeling of fear and of fear. But the idea is, and this is how we work, is that meditation is to begin connecting with the whole, feeling into the whole, and then noticing when a part calls to us, if there is a raga connection, one that is to attach, to enmesh, to fearfully attached, then we do some inquiry there. We look at that. We unravel that. If we see that there are places that aren't getting enough care, getting enough connection, places that have been abandoned or gaslighted or rejected, or places that there's war kind of being waged against or that we're fighting, we do inquiry around that. And it comes up in our meditation, right? In the Yoga Sutras, he tells us that we do a process of devolution in order to deal with the kleshas, meaning we get out of the socialized, psychologized, the stories, the conditioned, and we come back into the gunas, is actually what he talks about. And gunas just means the most foundational aspects of reality. Gunas could be translated as parts. It's often translated as elements, the most basic elements that make up our material reality. And guna are the gunas are basically darkness, light, and harmony. Okay. In our practices at different times, we've broken down the gunas into earth, water, fire, air, and ether. In May and June, we're going to go to our chakras and we're going to break the gunas down basically into the 7 chakras. But however simple or complex the map of these is, what we're doing is we're learning how to identify as something besides our thoughts, our stories, our beliefs, which all of which can actually take us out of, they're what take us out of meditation and can take us out of wholeness. Again, if you look at the body example and the ecosystem example I brought up right at the beginning, in nature, it's already doing it. Spirit already makes my heart do what it does and makes my gut do what it does. Spirit already, right? Spirit, wholeness, the Tao, right? God, wisdom, whatever you want to call it, already does that. But then somewhere along the way, we evolved in such a way that we came into this idea that somehow we are supposed to be in control. We're supposed to be masters and manipulators and creators and destroyers and sustainers of everything. And so this devolution process is to Patanjali is saying in the Yoga Sutras, look, we've got something that you can identify as for now, right? You devolve the kleshas. You start to see that the kleshas are the cause of all your suffering. And you learn how to identify yourself as standing somewhere else. And then that's in book 2, right? And then book 4, at the very end of the Yoga Sutras, what happens is even the gunas, we even drop our identity with the gunas. And that's when we have freedom. That's when we experience ourselves as awareness, as the self, the seer, the one that experiences. And so this is what I'm calling connection. There's the parts, there's the whole, and there's something that's common to all. That's consciousness. And then depending on which parts are connecting, there will be some flavor of care or love also present. But it starts with consciousness. It starts with awareness. And seeing that if you are going to make any kind of real connection, awareness is connecting with awareness. An autonomous part is respecting another autonomous part. The meditation that we did today is meant to help you come down into the embodied experience, and then to notice what arises when you get pulled out. Erin had a comment from that, which I'm going to respond to. Wrapping my discomfort in the love of my awareness. I loved that. And then my anger appeared and refused to be wrapped. She felt angry that I was in discomfort, and she just kept saying, no justice, no peace. And I love that, Erin. I love that so much. And I'll close by talking a little bit about this and then sharing a quote with you guys. Okay, a couple things. One is love is a shapeshifter because love respects everything it sees. Right? The whole teaching in a nutshell could be see, love, harmonize, right? Whatever I see, I can love. But the way that I love that thing, whereas seeing is sort of the same for everything, right? Loving something really must come from first seeing and respecting that autonomous part and its needs. I love my cacti, but I don't show it love by wrapping it up in my arms, sleeping with it at night. The cacti wouldn't really appreciate that, and it wouldn't feel good for me either. I also don't love the cacti the same way that I would love this marsh plant I have here that can't get enough water. The cacti will die if I give it too much water. That's me trying to impose some idea of love. And so the parts of us that are angry don't necessarily want to be cuddled up. They want to be heard and respected and seen. That part of you that feels angry, that wants justice before peace, that is a wise, noble part. And to love that part, well, that's an inquiry. That's an exploration for you. To go back to my example, look, I would have left that relationship way earlier if I hadn't been practicing, probably overly practicing compassion in spaces where it wasn't helpful. And it depends on how you speak of compassion, but I guess I mean like that snuggling up, you know, trying to love something in a one particular way when that is not what it's asking for. And I was trying to sort of like with my blind optimism and all of these teachings that I had absorbed, just love everyone, just love everyone. I was just getting deeper and deeper into my codependency with my ex. And I wasn't listening to the parts of me that said exactly that, Erin, actually. I'm not, no justice, no peace, right? And you know, I wasn't being respected. I was being lied to. I was, you know, and I had interior parts that were going, that's not right. And they were angry. And I couldn't shut them up no matter how I tried to go, everything's good here, you know? So that's why there's different flavors of love. There's different abodes. There's different aspects of it. And sometimes love is, this isn't working. Mm-mm. Right? All that being said, we got to go in there and listen to the parts, do inquiry with them, unravel our glaciers, right? But along the way, we also have to continually be able to establish ourselves in the whole. We also have to be able to recognize what is already harmonious, what's already working, what is already good, because otherwise we're going to get stuck in a part. I was stuck in the everything's fine part. I can also get stuck in the everything's fucked part. You see that both of those, I'm standing in a pole. I'm standing in a place inside of the whole, and I'm not able to claim my wholeness. because I'm so stuck on a part or so stuck against a part. Makes sense? And so I want your meditation practice and your daily practices to be, we have to do the inquiry. We have to look at the hard stuff. We have to figure out how to get justice or work toward it. And we have to spend some time resting and experiencing wholeness. So, okay, I'm going to close with this quote here. Nisargadatta, my dear teacher, pleasure lies in the relationship between the enjoyer and the enjoyed. And the essence of it is acceptance. Whatever may be the situation, if it's acceptable, it's pleasant. If it is not acceptable, it's painful. I'm going to read that again in just a little bit more context. Okay, he says, the bliss of reality doesn't exclude suffering. Besides, you know only pleasure, not the bliss of pure being. So let us examine pleasure at its own level. If you look at yourself in moments of pleasure or pain, you will invariably find that it is not the thing in itself that is pleasant or painful, but the situation of which it is a part. Pleasure lies in the relationship between the enjoyer and the enjoyed, and the essence of it is acceptance. Whatever may be the situation, if it is acceptable, it is pleasant. If it is not acceptable, it's painful. Whatever makes it acceptable is not important. The cause may be physical, psychological, or untraceable. Acceptance is the decisive factor. Adversely, suffering is due to non-acceptance. And so we could say that acceptance is sattva, what unites the light and the dark. We could say that acceptance is that love that we learn how to extend to everything we see. The same way we look inside and go, I have a heart, I have kidneys, I have blood. I didn't choose all this. I accept it. It's working. Here it is. To look around at the relationships that we have with others, if we can come to accept them, to accept that these are the relationships we have, these are the people that we're with. If we can look into our own past and say, oof, I got a lot that feels shameful or regretful to me in the past, or has felt that way. And unraveling the kleshas for me, right? Unraveling that non-acceptance means looking at my stories, looking at the things, the attachments and the aversions, and getting back to acceptance. Awareness and love. Consciousness and acceptance. These are the things that every part of you shares, that every being shares. These are where we make real connection. This week, take a look. I'll give you some inquiry prompts to help with this, but take a look and start to do this really loving thing, which is to accept what you find, what you see. And for now, just returning to that embodied awareness, right, as the home base is probably going to be really important. It really has been for me, because living in the stories, the beliefs, the identities, the attachments and aversions, all that, I've been putting my energy there for so, so long that we do need to find other places to land, other connections and sources that can hold us as we do that unraveling and returning, that kind of devolving back into our most ancient, essential aspects, awareness and love. Good, good. I'm glad that was helpful for a few of you on the line. And thanks to everybody for listening, for watching. Um, as we gear up for the rest of the year, I'm very excited about the chakras experience. It's going to be a very deep experience in May and June. I finally got the dates for a retreat that will be held in New York in July. I'll be posting about that. In the fall, I will be hosting a Yoga Sutras course. And then after that, hopefully, I'll be starting grad school. And so that's all just to let people know. And these next upcoming months, right, I've got this really cool schedule for us, really good deep work, lots of chances to work together. And then I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with this space after November or October, whenever the Yoga Sutras course ends. I will know soon. I'll keep you guys posted. But that's all to say, I'm trying to get the most out of this time that we have together, and I'm really excited to offer what I'm offering. And at the end of this year, there may be a pivot for me, or there will be for sure. And I'm not sure exactly how it's going to affect Nowhere Village. We've got lots of time ahead, but just also to say, if you do want anyone to come in and experience some of this, bring them in now. The Chakras course would be a great place for a new person to start. And yeah, and sometimes also just noticing that there is an end up ahead, even if it's several months ahead, for me at least helps me be more present with the work right now. And I know that this, especially people, we have a really small group live today, and I've just been reflecting, we've been at this for a long time, some of us, and very consistently. And it's totally great and okay to take breaks from being here. And also, uh, also, it won't last forever. Nothing does. And so I'm trying to remember that myself and really enjoy the time that we have.